Hello, it's that time again when we get to tell you all about the wonderful and inspirational events and people from Lincolnshire in episode 14 of the Links Knives Natters podcast. Today's guest is an artist at Original Art, also known affectionately as the Lincoln Map Lady, who paints lands and seascapes plus scenes on vintage maps, which are all over 50 years old. Here to tell us more is Fiona Duncan. Hello, Fiona, and welcome to the Links, Knives, Natters podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Shelley. I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good, good. For somebody that doesn't know what you do, how would you describe what you do?
Well, I'm an artist. I use acrylic paints, which I have to say are great since I discovered them. Um, Up until 2 years ago, I would describe myself as a fairly traditional landscape artist. Actually, it's 3 years ago because it was the start of lockdown when I started painting on maps. Um, I've had it in mind to do for about 20 odd years, but you know how things happened in lockdown. We all sort of found new things to do.
I think lockdown created so many new businesses and different ventures for people. I think people did things that they'd never dreamed they'd do before. And I think, is that how it went for you?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. It was just oh well, I'll have a go, see what happens. And the first ones were dreadful.
I'm sure they won't.
So yes, so I discovered from I contacted Ordnance Survey because I know they can be very, very strict on the use of their maps. And they told me so long as the maps are over 50 years old, they're out of copyright. So I'm free to do what I wish with them. So I started painting on maps, and I choose place that is on the map. So map of Lincoln, I painted Lincoln Cathedral, or well, quite a few other places as well that are fairly famous in Lincoln. But I don't just do Lincolnshire because I'm not born and bred Lincolnshire. I'm from North Cumbria.
Yeah, I was going to ask you sort of like if you wanted to tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in Lincolnshire.
Oh well, that's quite easy. The RAF brought me here. Yeah, I was born and raised in North Cumbria, about 10 miles from the Scottish border, a little town called Brampton. Um, and all I ever wanted to do was join the RAF. My mum had been in the RAF during the war. My sister was in the RAF in the 60s. So yes, this is what I would do. And at almost 18, I boarded the train from Carlisle and headed to Hereford for my basic training in the Women's Royal Air Force.
Wow.
And and it was fabulous. It was scary. It was lots of tears, but it was well worth it, definitely.
Yeah, listening to you, it sounds like you've had quite a good experience with your Women's Royal Air Force days and stuff. You know, did you
Certainly
get any
did.
did you get posted anywhere exotic?
In a word, no.
No.
My first posting was just outside London, a little place called Stanmore Park. I was posted to Bentley Priory, which is a couple of miles from Stanmore Park, and that was very interesting because that was HQ 11 Group, and it played a major part in the Battle of Britain. But I didn't spend long at Stanmore. Um, I was actually sort of supernumerary there, so I was posted on to Swanton Morley in Norfolk.
Wow. So they moved you around quite a bit.
Yeah, because when I got to Stanmore, they weren't expecting me. They didn't actually have a post for me. So
Oh wow.
oh yeah, that's just quite normal in the RAF. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
nothing surprising there.
Yeah, yeah. And then well, not an unfortunate event, but a kind of happy event. You had to leave the RAF, didn't you?
Yeah, I got married while I was in Norfolk, and so I was expecting a baby, and in those days the rules said that at 16 weeks you had to leave the RAF. Regardless whether you were married, unmarried, whatever, that was it. Off you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, so I left and had my first child in Norfolk, and then two more followed on when we were in Gloucester.
Wow. Wow. So, you had your children, and then you moved to Lincolnshire.
Yeah, so my husband was posted to Scampton, where I actually rejoined the Air Force there for 2 years on local service. And I was highly surprised when they gave me a gun, and I went, "Well, I'm a girl, we don't do guns." And they went, "Well, you do now, because
They
of
do
course the
now.
rules have changed." So yes, I did the gate guard and everything. But yes, so we did 3 years at Scampton, posted out to Germany, which was fabulous.
I bet.
And my husband got redundancy when in Germany, and then it's a case of, well, okay, where do we live? We're fairly rootless, so we knew we liked Lincoln. It had good prospects for work, whether in town or, there was plenty of places close by that you could look for work, and houses were a good price. So we went back to Lincoln, and here we are ever since.
And then you created your business. Do you want to sort of like why did you want to sort of make and sell
Well,
your art?
my sister is a very good artist, and for many years she, I would say to her, "Oh, I wish I could paint like you," and she fairly forcefully said, "Well, find a class and do it." So I did, and I started off with watercolor, which most people do, but it's actually probably the hardest medium to use. And I carried on with that for a few years, and eventually found acrylic. And I thought, yeah, this is what I like doing. Uh, Left the classes, started doing my own thing. Eventually started trying to sell a few, and some did sell. It wasn't great shakes, but it was a little bit of fun. And then the maps came, and
Yeah,
it went.
because you were telling me, because when you were in Germany, you bought a painting that was kind of like the start. It sort of
That's
ignited
it.
a passion.
Yes, exactly. So I bought this painting, and it's on a nautical map, of the Rhine out into the North Sea, that area, and it has a light. And I love this painting, and you look at it and think, "Oh, I could do that. I could do that." And then, as I say, lockdown started. I thought, right, well, I'm blimmin' well gonna have a go at it.
Good for
Um,
you.
and as I say, the first ones were really bad. And I mean, they were really bad. I was using the
They were,
wrong
let's
type.
just say they were work in progress, Fiona. They were
Yes,
work in progress, weren't they?
they were a work that progressed to the bin, I'm afraid.
Oh, Fiona.
No, they were. I was using the wrong type of maps. The just just doing it all wrong. But you've got to do things wrong before you find out why they're wrong.
That's very true, actually. Sometimes you've got to keep going at something, and then you sort of like, okay, I'm happy with that.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Because also, you were telling me you'd seen a program by Kirsty Allsop as well, just a name drop in there.
Yeah, absolutely. At the very start of lockdown, she does occasionally do art um art and craft programs. You've probably seen them around Christmas,
Oh,
and she
some of them
sometimes,
she's are
yeah,
wonderful, aren't they?
they're fabulous. She's so clever. But
Yeah.
she was doing this particular series. It wasn't the Christmas type. It was just showing you different things you could do. On this particular week, she was using maps, and she was doing decoupage and all sorts of things. Not what I wanted to do, but it was just that other kick up the bum to say, "Come on, have a go at what you know you want to do. So I did.
We were saying about, was there, when you were a child and stuff like that, was creativity a part of your childhood? Did you have a really inspiring art teacher?
Um, no.
No.
I think in those days, school, God, makes me sound ancient, but lessons were very traditional. Art was about painting beautiful pictures, and I wasn't any good at that. My mum liked art. My mum painted a bit, and we always had lovely pictures at home, some of which I have on my walls now. Um, so yes, I think art was always in the background. Creativity. My mum was a great seamstress, which I'm not. Um, so I think to an extent, yes, we were a sort of creative family, but I guess it's
Wow.
there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. It's just strange how something you say, and I wouldn't say that, something you say you're quite dreadful at school has now become your passion and also has
Exactly.
become your business.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's done a bit of a 360 on you, really, isn't it? Just
It
saying, oh,
has.
I'm dreadful at this, and now.
It is. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's quite strange.
This Links Lives Natters podcast is brought to you in association with A Guilty Secret, the brilliant new psychological thriller from best-selling Lincolnshire author Philippa East, creator of Little White Lies, Safe and Sound, and I'll Never Tell. It was only meant to be a game. At exclusive boarding school St Michael's, Carrie and her friends are used to getting away with anything, until one night their recklessness goes dangerously too far. They swore to keep what happened a secret. They swore to protect one another. But 16 years on, someone is about to break that promise, because you can't keep a guilty secret forever. Gripping and twisty, A Guilty Secret releases on the 18th of January 2024 and is available to pre-order via Amazon, Waterstones, and your favourite independent bookshops now. Don't miss out. Discover Philippa East's brilliant psychological thrillers today.
What's the story behind the locations for your maps? And do you have a process for finding sort of new subjects? Because I know you've painted Lincoln Cathedral on a map, and one of your favourites is Bamborough Castle, which is out of the area.
It is, yes. Well, I cover the whole of the UK, so yes, obviously I have a concentration of Lincolnshire because I live here now, and that is where my core sales are. But I always get asked for places here, there, and everywhere. But why do I paint on maps? I think it's history. I have always loved history. I was the strange geeky girl in the corner reading history books as a child. I mean, it started off with the Plantagenet kings, and it's progressed from there. It's whether it's buildings, whether it's maps. I mean, they do have the 50-year-old. Well, the newest are 50-year-old, which is actually 1973, which isn't that long ago.
Gosh, I suddenly feel quite old, Fiona.
Yeah, it is. It's very aging. It's doing 50-year-old maps. But you look at a map of that age and think, well, that isn't there. The ring road isn't there. This, that, and the other aren't there. And you find places that perhaps are on the map that now don't exist. So I think it's down to history, because most of the buildings that I paint have a history to them. I've done one or two landscapes. Well, landscape in itself is history. It's your natural history.
Well, some of that landscape isn't there anymore, because unfortunately developers want the land. And
Yeah.
then when I've seen you put an appeal out for maps, say I'm looking for a certain map over an age and stuff like that, and you look
Mm-hmm.
at the original map and you think, well, that's not there. and that's not
exactly.
there. And it goes back to how you're saying about landscapes and things like that. And you look at, if you look at some of the areas of, say, let's say Bracebridge Heath in
Yes.
Lincoln, that is getting so built up on now. You know,
Yeah,
fields unfortunately are disappearing, aren't they? Because
exactly. I mean,
people are building on them.
you look at a map of that age, and all these places are separate villages: Bracebridge Heath, North Highcombe, all these places that are now essentially they're parts of Lincoln, but then they were definite separate villages. So your cities change hugely over that time, and that's what's interesting.
Yeah, because like when you say, I hadn't started looking at maps until I'd sort of like seen your artwork and stuff, and thinking when, like I've just said, when I've looked at a map and gone, well, I didn't know that all used to be there, and I didn't know this used to be. I think it's a strange hobby I have. I actually like looking at maps and different things.
You're not alone. I would say 90% of my customers, their first reaction is, "Oh, I love maps," which is fabulous.
Yeah, because like these days they're dying out because everybody tends to use their sat navs on their phones if they're planning a map, planning a route rather, planning a
Yeah.
map, planning a route. Everybody just, yep, right. Have you got the phone? You're sitting in the car. Let's program the phone to put the
Then
map
what
in and stuff.
happens when you can't get a signal? I mean, like everybody else, yes, I use my phone, I use sat nav, but I always have a look at a map first. And I think, so I know exactly where I want to go from looking at the map. And then once I'm on the sat nav, I think, well, no, you're
That's
going
not
wrong there.
right.
I want to
That's
go this way. So,
yeah.
I don't always follow it because I know from looking at a map.
Yeah, we're saying about that. You know, it's sort of like, how do you stay motivated and productive, in your practice, and how long does it take you to create an art piece? Once you've got that idea in your head, how do you stay motivated to create that piece?
Sometimes I don't. Sometimes if it's somewhere or something that is really, really awkward and has lots of twiddly bits, you think, oh, why did I start this?
Yeah.
Like a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to paint a C-17 aircraft, the very, very big ones, and a
Wow.
Gazelle helicopter, which has lots of twiddly bits on it.
Yeah, the
Um,
rotor blades being one of them.
no, it's not so much the rotor blades, it's what the rotor blades connect to the helicopter. All these
Oh
little,
yeah, of course, all the twiddly bits, as you
all
say.
the twiddly bits, yes.
All the twiddly bits.
So, so that sort of one can take up to a week, which doesn't sound long, but when you're on it's a limited thing that you're painting. I'm just painting the helicopter. I'm not painting all the background and the landscape and everything else with it. It's one item on a map. So yes, that can be a bit awkward. Sometimes they just flow beautifully, and I think, great, this is it, and I'm done in day and a half. It's great.
Yeah, because one of the projects, yeah, that you're working on at the moment, and it's something I've been following you with, is the poppies at the International Bomber Command. You're actually going to be donating some money to
That's
International
right.
Bomber Command for that. Did you want to
Yes.
say about that a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So my first Bomber Command Spire painting, that was one of the first paintings that I did. And I just did sort of red, white, and blue grasses in inverted commas. Red, white, and blue for the RAF. And that was sort of my core map painting, to be honest. And as I said, that was one of the first I did. And then this year, I was looking to sort of revise it. And of course, we're coming up to Remembrance Day. So, and I mean, generally, I love painting poppies. You'll see them on quite a lot of my paintings, whether it's the traditional artwork or whether on maps. I try and put some poppies in if I can.
There's something sort of quite inspiring about poppies, though, isn't there? There's
Yeah,
something quite lovely about a poppy.
exactly. So I sort of surrounded the spire this time with poppies, and I'm donating 50% of the original artwork and prints and cards to the centre up until the 12th of November. So I think it's just a pretty picture, but I'm biased. It's quite a moving picture, I like to think, with the
It
poppy.
very much is. And I was just going to say, we will put all the links to Fiona's International Bomber Command prints and cards on our social media channels. So if anybody wants to purchase the cards or the prints, we will put all the links and all Fiona's contact details on our social media channels. So that's a very lovely thing you're doing for the International Bomber Command there. And we're saying
Well,
about that.
I've sort of followed them. I belong to a Lincolnshire former WAF group, and we've sort of followed the growth of the centre since it was a muddy field. And where I can, I've always tried to support the centre with my artwork.
Yeah, because I can look out my window, and if we look out the front windows, we can see it a little bit. Because one of my favourite things about the International Bomber Command Centre is I love it when the Lancaster flies over, and because we have something called the Lincoln Edge in the sort of back of our garden, we can sit up there and we can see the spire, and when the Lancaster flies over, it's just awe-inspiring.
It is, yeah, totally.
Absolutely lovely, and that's such a brilliant thing you're doing. Saying that, what memorable sort of responses have you got to your artwork, when you've painted something quite inspiring, and the customer or yourself, you think, wow, that was really, really good.
I think the most memorable, and I hope if the lady is listening to this, she won't mind me mentioning it. So I painted the Bass Maltings down at Sleaford. Do you know where I mean?
Yes, it's a very iconic group of buildings, sort of in Sleaford, because there has been many a news story. Unfortunately, somebody set fire to part of it, or they were going to convert it into flats. To be honest with you, I don't actually know what's happening with Bass
Don't
Maltings.
think anybody does. Don't think anybody.
No, and it's such a lovely building. To see it. It's a big building. It's a very big
it's
building.
a series about, I think, 6, perhaps more buildings, and there were maltings for beer, where they would malt the grain, and it's quite an iconic set of buildings. And I thought, right, that suits the maps. They're old, they're historical, they're interesting. I'm going to try and paint them. So I did. And I had this painting for quite some time because it's not to everybody's taste. But I was at Dunham Lodge Gardens. They have an open garden day twice a year, which is fabulous to go to. And I had it out there, and a young lady came up to me and she just gasped and, oh, that's wonderful, yes. And she found the village just north of Sleaford, where her mum, I think, was born. Certainly they were raised. And she went on to tell me that she'd very recently lost her mum. And this picture just resonated with her. And by the end, she bought it. We were both in tears. And
Fiona,
it was just really very moving. And I thought, wow, that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, so somebody has that sort of reaction to something, if you're having a bit of a, let's just say, a non-motivated day, and somebody sort of does that to you, and think, wow, like you've just said, that's really worth all the hard work, the hours that you put in. And well, that's a lovely thing to happen, isn't it?
It really was. It was, yeah.
Yeah, you know, saying about we're going on about Sleaford Bass Maltings and stuff, and I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation about your favourite or most inspirational place, and I think we mentioned it earlier, didn't we? We talked about it a little bit earlier.
Bamburgh Castle.
Doesn't know it. Explain Bamburgh Castle. You know, explain sort of what it's got and what the draw is to it.
Well, I guess younger people would know it for. Now, there was a program on recently, and I've forgotten the name of it. Of course,
It wasn't the Hairy Bikers, was it?
no,
Because I
This
know
was
the Hairy
a
Bikers went there.
Viking series with he was a Viking chap, and they set the story. They called it Bebenburg, but it was actually the ancient Viking name for Bamburgh.
Wow.
But its true history goes back to Norman times, as do most of our castles, and probably beyond Norman times. I mean, I think it was a Viking stronghold in its time. It's set virtually on the beach in Northumberland. And if anyone knows the Northumbrian beaches, they are glorious golden sand going on for miles.
I've only seen it on telly, Fiona, to be honest with you, and I've seen it in various TV shows, and it's on one of my hit lists to actually go there and stuff, because I know you can actually stay in the castle. Haven't seen how much it is to actually get in and stay, so I don't know how much it is to actually stay in one of the towers on the castle, but I know what you're saying about the beach is absolutely gorgeous.
Certainly is, and it's just such a fabulous setting.
Yeah, and I can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about
Def
Bamburgh,
oh
and
God,
you're like,
yes.
wow, yeah,
That's the
this is
history
one of
thing
my,
again, you see.
yeah, one
It's
of the
history.
sort of iconic sort of places for you, and you can hear it in your voice. You
Definitely.
know, absolutely brilliant. Is there a favourite place in Lincolnshire you like as
Favourite
well?
place in Lincolnshire? Well, I think it would have to be the Spire. Perhaps a favourite old place would be Doddington Hall. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
absolutely iconic building
Yeah, definitely. It's such
with its domed roof and sort of domed
yeah,
towers, would you say?
yeah. I mean, it's a classic Elizabethan building, and it's just stunning. Absolutely love it.
You know, it's like we have some of these hidden jewels in Lincolnshire that
We have
people don't know.
loads of them.
That's where it goes back to the map thing. You know, it's like some of these things aren't on latest maps, and it goes back to when you're saying, well, that I haven't seen that before, and it's not until you look back on these old maps and you think, well, I didn't know that was there because it's not on, you know, a modern day map. And we've got
Mhm.
all these hidden jewels around here and stuff like these, all
Mm,
these deserted old RAF bases as well. There's old
yeah,
RAF Woodhall Spa. You know, you've got all these hidden treasures round here and stuff, but people just don't seem to go to these places anymore.
I think that's another of the things that appeals to me because obviously my RAF links.
Yeah.
My most of my Lincoln-based maps have so many. I mean, some have 5 or 6 former RAF stations. We've got Waddington, which is obviously still a current RAF station, but almost any Lincolnshire map that I paint on has at least one former RAF station on. And many of them I remember my mum talking about from when she was in the WAAF during World War II.
What do you love most about life as an artist? Because, you know, what inspires you to do it?
Um, what I love most about it is the meeting people, going to events and chatting to people and hearing their memories of places. Oh, I was born there, or I went to school there, or my grandma lived there, this sort of thing. That's fabulous. I love that. What inspires me? Just the fabulous buildings in Great Britain, in the UK. And I'm not going to say in Lincolnshire because, as I
There's
say,
too many.
yeah, there's so many in Lincolnshire, but there's just a phenomenal amount of places that are inspiring in the UK, and they're all worthy of being put on paper, put on a map.
Yeah, because one of the things, is it quite difficult once you get an idea in your head to actually get it down on paper and then to actually looking like how you want it to
Yeah.
look like?
Definitely, absolutely. And some I just can't do. There's one, near Grantham, there's a big manor,
Harlaxton?
Harlaxton.
Yes.
And somebody suggested painting that, and I had a look at it and I thought, oh no, far too many twiddly towers and bits and pieces. I know my limitations. I'm not a trained artist. I never went to college or anything like that. I just picked up a brush and started to doodle. So you've got to know your limitations, and Harlaxton Manor is definitely my limitation.
Yeah, because it's come up on my radar sort of quite recently, because I know it's a building that doesn't open to the public, only very, very sort of
That's right.
obscure times. And I know they're
Yeah.
opening this year for Christmas. They've actually decided to open this year for a couple of
Oh,
weeks for
wonderful.
Christmas. And I'm thinking, well, that could be quite closer than Chatsworth, and it's
Yes.
such a if for anybody who doesn't know Harlaxton Manor, I suggest you go and look at it, to look at what Fiona's describing with all the, as we say, the twirly bits, the domes,
Yep.
the roofs, because it's such an interesting building. And like you say, it's come up on my radar because they are going to open for Christmas. So Harlaxton Manor, one day, Fiona, one day
Well,
you
one
might
day,
go.
you never know. Never say
You
never.
never. And Fiona, it's been lovely chatting to you. We're actually running out of time. I could actually chat to you all day. I think we will return on to this, because there's a few things that you mentioned that I'd like to talk to you about, and
Well,
I think we will revisit. So Fiona Duncan, thank you so much for talking to the Links Lives Natters podcast. What we will do is we will put on all Fiona's details of her maps, her commissions, and how to contact Fiona will be all put on to our social media sites. Fiona Duncan, thank you very much for talking to the Links Lives Natters podcast.
Thank you very much. You take care.
JNS Plumbing. JNS Plumbing is your local, friendly, reliable plumbing and heating engineer covering Lincoln and surrounding areas. Our experienced and fully qualified heating engineers are on hand to carry out boiler installation, repairs and servicing. Just call 01522 708 208. That's 01522 708 208, or email sales@jasplumbingandheating.co.uk. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and it was a real pleasure to natter with Fiona Duncan from Original Art. All her links will be available in the comments section. Our thanks to our sponsors on this episode. My thanks to my production team for all their hard work in producing the podcast. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help it grow, head to our social media pages on Twitter and Facebook. Also, if you'd like to subscribe, head over to YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast. Please share this episode with others who may be interested. See you next time for another great episode of the Links Lives Natters podcast with myself, Shelley.